AITA for telling my sister to stop bringing her dog to my house. So I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F, who I've always been close with. We grew up together, and despite the usual sibling spats, we've always had a solid relationship. However, things have been a little strained between us lately, and it's all because of her dog, Max. Now, Emily got Max about a year ago, and I'll admit I wasn't initially thrilled about the idea. She had been talking about getting a dog for a while, and while I'm not an animal hater, I'm just not really a dog person. I've never had a pet myself, and I've always found them a little overwhelming. But I understood that Emily was excited, so I didn't make a big deal out of it. I told her I'd try to get used to it, and that we could still hang out, even if I wasn't super enthusiastic about her new dog. However, things started getting complicated when she began bringing Max with her everywhere. I get it, she's attached to the dog, and he's her companion, but it's been starting to feel like she can't go anywhere without him. The issue started a few months ago when she came over to my place for dinner. At first, I didn't think much of it. Max was a puppy at the time, and she said he had separation anxiety, so she brought him along because she didn't want to leave him home alone. Fine, I thought. She was just getting used to having him around, and I didn't want to make her feel bad. But then, every time we hung out after that, Max was there. The turning point came when she invited me over to her house for a movie night. I didn't want to be rude, so I went, but when I walked in, the place smelled like wet dog, and Max was running around barking and jumping on the furniture. I asked Emily if she could maybe put Max in a separate room for the evening, and she looked at me like I had 3 heads. She told me that he was her baby and that it wasn't fair to keep him in a different room while I was there. I tried to let slide, but I ended up feeling uncomfortable for most of the night. Every time I sat down, Max would jump on my lap or start barking at something outside. It was exhausting, and by the time I left, I was pretty frustrated. The next time she came to my place, I decided to be more direct about the issue. I told her that I wasn't super comfortable with Max being around all the time, especially since I didn't have a dog myself. I asked if she could maybe leave him at home sometimes when she came over. She got really defensive, saying that I was being unfair and that I should be more understanding. She told me that I was basically telling her to choose between her dog and me. I tried to explain that it wasn't about choosing, but that I wanted to be able to have a peaceful visit without her dog constantly interrupting. She didn't take it well, and we ended up having a pretty big argument. Since then, things have been tense. Emily has continued to bring Max with her whenever she visits, and it's been getting worse. A few weeks ago, she invited me to her birthday party at her place. I told her I'd be happy to come, but I mentioned again that I'd prefer if Max could be kept in a separate room during the party. I was hoping we could have some time to just relax and catch up without the dog being a constant distraction. She absolutely lost it. She called me selfish, saying that if I didn't like being around Max, I didn't have to come. She said I was attacking her for being a good pet owner and that I was making her feel bad about having a dog. At this point, I started to feel really guilty. I love my sister, and I didn't want to cause any rifts in our relationship. But at the same time, I felt like I was being completely disregarded. I've never asked her to give up Max or anything, but I don't think it's unreasonable to want some space when I'm hanging out with her. It feels like she's using the dog as an excuse to avoid listening to my feelings, and I'm starting to get frustrated. I'm torn because I could see where she's coming from. She loves Max, and I get that he's important to her, but I also feel like I'm being steamrolled. I've tried to compromise by offering to go out to places that don't allow dogs, but she's always insisted on bringing Max. I've tried to be understanding, but at this point, I'm just feeling suffocated. I've had a few friends tell me I'm being too harsh and that I should just accept the dog as part of the package. But I'm really not sure if I'm in the wrong here. AITA for asking my sister to stop bringing her dog to my house and social events. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot and motivates me to create even more amazing content just for you. Make sure to turn on notifications so you'll never miss out on a new video. I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for your support. It truly helps the channel grow. AITA for choosing to go on a solo trip instead of helping my family move. I, 29M, have been working at a tech company for the last 2 years, and due to the nature of my job, I often have the flexibility to work remotely. My family lives about 5 hours away from me, and I try to visit them a couple of times a year, but it's not always possible due to my work schedule and other commitments. Over the years, I've noticed that my relationship with my family has become more strained. We've had a history of disagreements, especially between my mom, 56F, and me. So, here's the situation. My mom recently decided to move to a new house in a nearby town. She told me about it a few months ago, and I was expecting her to ask for help, as she has with previous moves. Normally, I would be more than willing to pitch in, but I had already planned a solo trip to a national park for a week. It's something I've been looking forward to for a while, something I could really use after dealing with the stresses at work. I told her about the trip about a month before her move, and at the time, she seemed okay with it. She said she understood, and we agreed that I'd help out when I returned. Fast forward to a week before my trip. My mom calls and says the move date has been finalized, and she needs my help more than ever. She explained that the moving company she hired had canceled on her last minute, and now she was trying to scramble to find another one. She was starting to panic, as she was also planning to get settled in time for a work trip she had coming up. She asked if I could delay my trip by a few days to help her out. I told her I could sympathize with the stress she was under, but I didn't want to cancel my trip. I explained that I had made plans and was really looking forward to having some time to myself, especially after months of constant work. I even offered to help her out when I got back. She didn't take the news well. She immediately got upset and accused me of being selfish. She said that as her son, it was my responsibility to prioritize family over personal plans. She told me that I was being inconsiderate and that my trip was more important to me than helping my mom move into her new home. I tried to explain that I wasn't choosing my trip over her. Rather, I was simply trying to take care of my mental health, something I thought was important too. But she was having none of it. She called me selfish, immature, and ungrateful. My siblings, 26F and 32M, also got involved. My sister sent me a message saying I should help out and that family is family, even if I had planned this trip. My brother, who's married and lives farther away, said that he would have helped if he were closer and that I should be a better son. My mom even brought up how I've been absent from family events in recent months, as I had skipped a few gatherings for work or other personal reasons. It felt like they were all ganging up on me. This whole situation really started to get under my skin. I feel like I've been made to feel guilty for wanting some time to myself. Yes, I know it's a family move and I understand that it's an important event, but it's not like I've abandoned them. I've helped them with big things in the past, like when my mom moved into her previous house, and I've been supportive in other ways. I also don't think it's fair to expect me to drop everything for this move, especially when I've already made plans that I've been looking forward to for a while. The last straw came when my mom called me in tears and said that no one in the family was going to be there for her, and she didn't know who to turn to. That really made me feel like I was the bad guy, even though I was just trying to balance my own well-being. She even said that she might consider not inviting me to family gatherings in the future if I couldn't make this move a priority. I still haven't decided what to do. I want to help her, but I also feel like I need to stick to my plan. This trip is something I've been dreaming about, and I've already canceled things in the past for family events. I'm starting to wonder if I'm in the wrong here for sticking to my trip or if they're being too demanding. So, AITA for choosing to go on my solo trip instead of helping my mom move. AITA for telling my sister she's a terrible parent after she let her son stay with me for a week. Okay, so 28M, am kind of stuck in a situation right now, and honestly, I feel like I might be the jerk, but at the same time, I feel like I'm totally in the right here. Here's some context. I'm single, no kids, and pretty much just live a quiet, independent life. My sister, Sarah, 32F, has 2 kids, Evan, 8M, and Lily, 5F. We've always had a pretty good relationship, but I'll admit she's always been a bit more relaxed when it comes to parenting. Like, I get that kids are tough, but she's never been really strict about boundaries or enforcing rules, and sometimes it feels like she's just kind of letting things slide when they shouldn't. A few months ago, Sarah reached out to me and asked if Evan could stay with me for a week. She and her husband, James, were going on a trip, and she didn't want to put the kids in daycare, But Evan is at that age where he's too old for a babysitter and too young to just stay home alone. So she thought it would be nice if he could spend time with his cool uncle. At first, I was like, sure, why not? I've never really had a problem with Evan. He's a sweet kid, but I'll admit, I don't have much experience with kids, and I'm not exactly used to spending a week alone with one. Sarah reassured me that Evan would be fine and that he was easy to deal with. She said all the usual things like he's a great kid, just make sure he doesn't eat too much junk food and try to keep him in bed by 9, and all that. I thought, okay, I can handle this. Well, the first few days went okay. I took him to the park, we played some video games, and I tried to keep him entertained. But as the week went on, I started noticing some issues. For one, Evan was extremely disrespectful. Like, not just the usual kid stuff, but full-on ignoring me when I asked him to do things. I'd tell him it was time to eat, and he'd refuse. I'd ask him to clean up his toys, and he'd just leave them scattered everywhere. I was trying to be patient, but he started testing my boundaries and pushing limits in a way that felt excessive. It didn't help that when I called Sarah to ask for advice, she basically laughed it off and told me, "Oh, he does that at home sometimes, but I'm sure he's just bored at your place. Don't be too hard on him." I tried to ask her for some tips on how to deal with it, but she kept telling me he'd grow out of it and that I should just let him be a kid. She wasn't really offering any help. By day 4, I was exhausted. I'd asked Evan multiple times to clean up his mess, stop shouting in the house, and be a little more respectful, but he just kept pushing back. I had to start getting stricter, telling him there would be consequences if he didn't listen. Well, he didn't like that, and it led to an argument where he yelled at me, calling me a mean uncle and saying I wasn't fun. I won't lie, it kind of stung, but at that point, I didn't know what else to do. I had tried everything from being super nice to firm, and nothing was working. It wasn't until I threatened to call his mom and let her know what was going on that he finally seemed to calm down. But the whole situation felt off to me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. After the week was over and Sarah picked Evan up, she came by to ask how things went. I told her the truth. I told her that I felt like Evan wasn't listening to me and that I wasn't sure what was going on at home, but that I was really starting to feel like there was some lack of discipline happening. I explained how difficult the week had been for me and how I'd tried to be patient, but nothing seemed to stick. Sarah didn't take it well. She got defensive, saying I should have been nicer to Evan, that he was just a kid, and that I should have understood him better. She told me I was being too hard on him and that I was probably just taking out my frustrations on him because I wasn't used to kids. Then, she accused me of not understanding parenting and made it clear that I shouldn't be criticizing her parenting style. I tried to explain that I wasn't criticizing her, but just sharing my experience. She told me I had no right to comment on her kid and that I needed to mind my business. Things got heated, and I ended up telling her that I thought she was a terrible parent for letting her son act like that, and that if she didn't start putting her foot down, Evan was going to grow up thinking he could get away with anything. I might have gone a little too far with that comment, but I was just so frustrated. Now Sarah isn't speaking to me, and I'm not sure if I went overboard or if she's just being sensitive. On one hand, I feel like she needed to hear the truth. On the other hand, I can't help but think maybe I should have been more careful with my words. So, AITA for telling my sister she's a terrible parent, AITA for refusing to lend my brother money for a new car after he crashed his old one because of his reckless driving. So I, 29M, have a brother, 26M, who has always been a bit of a wild card. Growing up, he was always the impulsive one, the kind who would jump into things without thinking of the consequences. While I was more cautious, he always seemed to get away with whatever he did, especially when it came to breaking rules or being reckless. I've always had a strong sense of responsibility, and because of that, I was usually the one that ended up picking up the pieces when things went south for him. A few months ago, my brother crashed his car. It wasn't a small accident. He was speeding, running a red light, and just being generally reckless. He walked away from it without a scratch, but the car was totaled. He didn't have insurance, which I had warned him about numerous times, and the car wasn't even his. It was a loaner from a friend because he hadn't been able to save up enough money to buy a car of his own yet. His friend was understandably upset about the situation, but thankfully, the guy didn't press charges or demand money for damages. When I first heard about the accident, I was frustrated but also relieved that my brother was okay. However, my relief was short-lived. A few days after the accident, he came to me asking for help. He wanted to buy a new car, and of course, he didn't have enough money. He asked me if I would lend him the money so he could get one. I was taken aback. I understand that he needed a car for work, but after the way he'd been driving and the reckless choices he'd made, I wasn't sure I was comfortable with giving him any more financial help. I've always been the person in the family who steps up when things go wrong, but I was starting to feel taken advantage of. I've lent him money before for things like rent, bills, and even previous car issues, but I was always left feeling like he wasn't learning from his mistakes. It was like I was constantly bailing him out of his own poor decisions, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep doing it. This time, I was adamant that I wouldn't lend him any more money, especially for something as big as a car. I tried to explain my reasoning to him, saying that I couldn't just keep enabling his reckless behavior and that he needed to take responsibility for his actions. I told him that if he wanted a car, he needed to figure out a way to save up for it himself or look into other, more affordable options. I wasn't going to put myself in a position where I was risking my own financial stability to cover for him anymore. I also told him that I couldn't continue to act as if his reckless driving didn't have consequences. The fact that he had crashed his car because of his own choices made me feel like it wasn't my responsibility to fix things for him anymore. To say he was upset would be an understatement. He told me I was being unreasonable and that I was abandoning him when he needed help the most. He said he had no one else to turn to, and I was his only hope in getting back on his feet. He also accused me of being selfish and not understanding how hard things had been for him. Honestly, hearing that from him hurt a lot. I've always supported him in the past, even when he made mistakes, and now it felt like he was blaming me for his own lack of responsibility. After that conversation, things got tense between us. He didn't speak to me for a few weeks, and I could tell he was holding a grudge. My parents also got involved, calling me to tell me I was being harsh and unsympathetic. They argued that I should help him out this one time because he's your brother, and that family is supposed to stick together in tough times. They made it sound like I was some sort of villain for not just giving him the money he asked for. I tried explaining my side to them, but they didn't seem to understand. They just kept saying I was being cold and that I should help him, no questions asked. Eventually, my brother reached out to me again, but this time it was to ask for something smaller. He wanted me to co-sign a loan for a car. I told him no again. I explained that I didn't want to risk my own credit or finances just because he couldn't seem to get his act together. He got furious and said that I was just trying to control his life and that I didn't trust him. He said if I couldn't help him, then I didn't deserve to be part of his life. This whole situation has been really draining. On one hand, I feel like I should be there for him, but on the other hand, I know that constantly bailing him out isn't helping him. He needs to face the consequences of his actions and take responsibility for them. I know this is going to affect our relationship for a while, but I can't shake the feeling that I made the right decision. So, AITA for refusing to lend my brother money for a new car after he crashed his old one due to his own reckless driving? Am I being too hard on him, or is this just a case of him needing to face the consequences of his actions? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's graduation because of how she treated me growing up? So, I'm 27F, in a bit of family drama situation right now, and I'm genuinely torn about whether I'm being a complete asshole or if I'm justified in how I'm feeling. I've been going back and forth on this for days now and could really use some outside perspectives. I'll start with some background. I have a younger sister, Lucy, 24F. We grew up in a pretty standard household in terms of dynamics. Our parents were loving but also strict, and I think for the most part, we both had what we needed, though not always what we wanted. I was always the responsible one, the good kid. I did well in school, helped out around the house, and generally stayed out of trouble. Lucy, on the other hand, was the wild one. She was a lot more rebellious, and while our parents tried to rein her in, she never really seemed to get into trouble for things the way I did. When we were teenagers, I had to be the one to cover for her when she broke curfew, lied about where she was, or failed to clean up after herself. It was like she could do no wrong, and I was the one who always had to be the adult. Fast forward a bit, and Lucy graduated from college recently with honors. I was happy for her, But to be honest, I was also a little bit bitter about it. The reason? Throughout our entire childhood, she always seemed to get more attention, praise, and support from our parents, despite her behavior. Growing up, she would do things like skipping school or ignoring chores, and yet our parents would always say, well, she's just going through a phase, or she's got so much potential. Meanwhile, I would get scolded for things that weren't even my fault, or I'd be told to set a better example for Lucy when she would act out. My parents were always focused on her, always trying to help her find her way, while I had to deal with everything on my own. This tension has been building up for years now, and I've been trying to reconcile it, but it's hard. I feel like I spent my entire adolescence playing the role of a second parent to Lucy, and when I was struggling emotionally or mentally, I didn't get the same attention or support. In high school, I battled with some depression, but since I wasn't a problem child like Lucy, no one really noticed. Meanwhile, she would get all the sympathy and resources, even when her actions were directly causing problems for everyone. Now, to the actual situation that's causing all the drama. Lucy graduated from college recently, and, as expected, there was a huge family celebration planned. Our parents were thrilled, sending out invitations to everyone in the family. I know this should be a happy occasion, and I've tried to be supportive on the surface, but I couldn't shake the resentment that's been building for years. So, here's where I might be the asshole. I told my parents I wasn't going to the graduation. I explained that I didn't feel comfortable celebrating Lucy's success after everything that happened between us, and that I've just had enough of always being the one to support everyone else while no one ever supported me. I said that I couldn't celebrate her graduation when I felt so invisible in our family growing up. My parents were pissed. My mom called me selfish, saying that I was making Lucy's big day about me and my issues. She said that this was Lucy's moment to shine, and I shouldn't let my resentment ruin it. My dad was a little more understanding, but still insisted that I should just put my feelings aside and come. He said it was a family event and that it would mean a lot to Lucy if I were there. I told them that if they were so concerned about Lucy's feelings, they should have considered mine when I was growing up, but they didn't seem to see my point. Since then, things have been icy between me and my parents. My mom keeps sending me text messages asking me to reconsider, saying how hurt Lucy is that I won't be there. She told me it would be a family betrayal if I didn't show up, and that I needed to put the past behind me. I feel like my feelings are being completely invalidated, and I'm being guilt-tripped into showing up to something that feels more like a slap in the face than a celebration. I know some might say it's just a graduation, and I should suck it up and go for the sake of family harmony. But I'm honestly at a point where I feel like my emotional needs and boundaries have been overlooked for so long, and I'm tired of pretending to be okay with being treated this way. I've always been the responsible one, the one who takes care of everyone else, but when it comes to me, it's like I don't matter. So, AITA for refusing to go to my sister's graduation? I get that it's a big deal for her, but I just don't know if I can keep putting everyone else's feelings above my own. AITA for refusing to let my brother-in-law live with me after he broke her trust? So, a bit of background. I, 29M, have been married to my wife, Emma, 28F, for about 4 years now. We met in college, and we have a pretty solid relationship, good communication, mutual respect, etc. We don't have kids yet, but we're both looking forward to starting a family soon. My wife has an older brother, Tom, 32M. To be honest, Tom and I have never really gotten along well. It's not that we hate each other, but we've always had different values and personalities. He's the type of guy who doesn't really take responsibility for anything and expects others to clean up his mess. Emma and I have talked about it before, and while she's tried to help him out, she agrees he has a lot of growing up to do. Tom's been struggling financially for years, mostly because he's been irresponsible with his money. He's the kind of person who makes impulsive purchases, lives beyond his means, and doesn't really understand the concept of saving or budgeting. On top of that, he's had some issues with jobs and getting fired or quitting without having another lined up. It's been frustrating for Emma to see, but she's always tried to support him in her own way, mostly by offering emotional support and occasionally helping him out with small loans. About 6 months ago, Tom lost yet another job. This time, it was for reasons he blamed on his manager, which I honestly don't think was entirely accurate. The reality is that he just didn't take the job seriously, and his lack of work ethic caught up with him. That's when he reached out to us for help. At first, Emma and I discussed the idea of him moving in with us temporarily. We have a decent-sized house, and while it would be a bit cramped, we figured it could be a short-term solution until he found a new job and got back on his feet. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I agreed because I knew Emma wanted to help her brother, and I thought it would be for a limited time. Tom moved in a couple weeks later. Everything seemed okay at first. He was looking for work, and we tried to be supportive without enabling his bad habits. However, it quickly became clear that he wasn't taking the situation seriously. Instead of focusing on finding a new job, he spent his days playing video games, binge-watching Netflix, and hanging out with friends. When we bring up his job search, he'd get defensive, saying that he was just taking a break and the right opportunity would come along eventually. He also wasn't contributing to the household at all. No cleaning, no grocery shopping, nothing. I'll admit, I was starting to get frustrated, but I tried to keep my cool. Things really started to fall apart a few months in when we noticed Tom was making poor financial decisions again. He had ordered some expensive gadgets online using our Wi-Fi, and when I confronted him about it, he brushed it off like it wasn't a big deal. He claimed he deserved it because he'd been stressed out and that he was planning to pay it off when he got a new job. I told him that wasn't how things worked, and we had a serious conversation about how we couldn't afford to keep enabling his behavior. He apologized, but I didn't feel like he truly understood the problem. The final straw came about a week ago when Emma and I came home after a day out to find Tom had invited a group of friends over for drinks. The house was a mess, and they were all sitting in our living room, drinking and laughing like it was a party. I was pissed. We had agreed that he could stay with us temporarily, but he wasn't respecting our space or our rules. I asked him to ask his friends to leave, and he got upset, saying I was being too harsh. He then stormed off to his room and refused to talk to us for the rest of the night. I had reached my breaking point at that moment. Emma and I had a long talk after that, and I told her that I didn't want Tom living with us anymore. I explained that we had done everything we could to help him, but he wasn't respecting our time, our house, or our rules. Emma tried to argue that he was in a tough spot and needed more time, but I stood firm. I told her that if she wanted to continue helping him, she could do so on her own terms, but I didn't want him living in our house anymore. We eventually agreed that Emma would have a conversation with Tom and give him a firm deadline to move out. Emma talked to him the next day, and of course, he didn't take it well. He accused both of us of abandoning him and said that we were being cold-hearted and unsupportive. He argued that he was doing his best and that we should be more understanding. He even made Emma feel guilty by saying that he'd always been there for her growing up and that she should be doing more to help him now. It was a whole emotional manipulation thing, and honestly, it pissed me off even more. Now, Tom has moved out, but there's been a lot of tension between us. Emma is upset because she feels torn between her brother and me. She doesn't think I gave him enough time, and she's upset that I put my foot down so firmly. I, on the other hand, feel like I was more than reasonable, and I can't keep enabling Tom's behavior just because he's family. I feel like I did the right thing by setting boundaries, but Emma still feels like I was too harsh. She says I'm the one who pushed Tom away by being so rigid. She keeps telling me that I should have been more patient and compassionate, but I don't think it would have made any difference. Tom needs to grow up and take responsibility for his life. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother-in-law live with me after he broke our trust. Edit. To clarify, Tom is not a kid. He's an adult in his 30s, and we've given him multiple chances over the years. It's not like we just kicked him out over one mistake. There were multiple conversations about responsibility and respect, and he consistently refused to change. AITA for kicking out my best friend after they kept making fun of my weight loss. So, a bit of backstory. I've, 29F, been overweight for most of my adult life. After years of struggling with my self-esteem and health, I decided last year that enough was enough. I started working out, eating better, and generally just focused on improving my lifestyle. It's been a slow process, but I'm down around 50 pounds, and I've started feeling a lot better about myself. I still have a long way to go, but I'm proud of the progress I've made. The issue started with my best friend, Sophie, 30F, who's always been supportive in her own way, But recently she started making a lot of offhand comments about my weight loss. At first, I didn't think much of it. I'm used to people making comments about my size, both positive and negative. But over the past few months, it's gotten worse. Instead of compliments or words of encouragement, it feels like she's been mocking me. A couple of weeks ago, we were hanging out at a mutual friend's birthday party. I was feeling pretty good about myself in a new outfit I'd bought, one that fit me better than it had a year ago. Sophie and I were talking when she suddenly blurted out, "Wow, you actually look decent now. You're almost normal looking." She laughed, but I didn't find it funny. I tried to laugh it off, but it stuck with me. I've been working hard to lose weight, and while I'm not looking for constant validation, it was really hurtful to have her reduce all that effort to a casual insult. That wasn't the only time. A few days ago, we were grabbing coffee together, and she said, "I don't get why people go so crazy with all this weight loss stuff. You're already pretty cute, but you do look a little obsessed. You've been talking about your progress nonstop. Can't you just relax a bit? No one cares that much." This is where I started to feel like it wasn't just an innocent comment. It felt like she was intentionally putting me down, questioning my efforts, and belittling my accomplishments. I've always been sensitive about my weight, and I've tried to surround myself with people who uplift me, not tear me down. When I tried to talk to her about it, I was really careful to express how hurtful her comments were without being too defensive. I told her something along the lines of, "Sophie, I know you're my friend, but the way you've been talking about my weight loss lately really stings. I'm putting a lot of effort into it, and I'd appreciate it if you could be more supportive." Her reaction was basically to shrug it off. She said something like, "Oh, I didn't mean it that way. I just think you're taking it too seriously. Don't be so sensitive. I was only joking." She didn't even apologize, and it felt like she dismissed my feelings completely. It was almost like I was being too dramatic for being upset. After that, I really started to notice how often she would make these types of comments. During a group dinner, when I mentioned how proud I was of myself for sticking to my workout routine, Sophie laughed and said, "Yeah, you're definitely looking better, but you still have a long way to go before you're normal." That was the last straw for me. It didn't feel like joking anymore. It felt like she was actively trying to make me feel bad about myself. So I did something I'm still not sure was the right move. I texted her and told her that I needed some space and that I didn't think I could continue hanging out with her until she could respect my boundaries and stop making these comments. I explained that it felt like she was deliberately putting me down and that I couldn't keep pretending it wasn't hurting me. Her response was not what I expected. She went off on me, saying I was overreacting and that I needed to learn to take a joke. She said that if I was going to let some harmless comments ruin our friendship, then maybe we weren't as close as I thought. She even told me I was being dramatic and that it was all just lighthearted fun. I was left feeling completely blindsided. I never thought it would escalate to this. I've known Sophie for over a decade, and I thought she was someone who would understand how much weight loss means to me, both literally and emotionally. But it seems like she doesn't get it all. Since then, we've barely spoken, and I've had a lot of time to think about whether I was overreacting. On the one hand, I know Sophie isn't a mean person, but the comments have been consistently hurtful. On the other hand, maybe I should have just brushed it off, like she suggested, and not made it a bigger deal. Now, I'm feeling unsure about everything. I know my weight loss journey is personal to me, but I also know that I shouldn't have to deal with constant negativity from someone I consider a best friend. But at the same time, maybe I was too sensitive. AITA for cutting off my best friend because of her comments about my weight loss. I'd really appreciate any outside perspective on this. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's graduation after she insulted me. I, 28M, have a sister, Emily, 25F, who just graduated from college. We've had a pretty good relationship growing up, and even though we don't always see eye to eye on everything, we've generally supported each other. But this year, things got a little complicated. It all started a few months ago when Emily invited me to her graduation ceremony. It was no surprise. I knew she'd been working hard for this day, and I was genuinely happy for her. She was graduating with a degree in biology and had been talking about going to grad school for a while, so it felt like a big accomplishment for her. However, a few weeks before the ceremony, I started to notice some changes in her behavior. She began to act distant, like she wasn't interested in talking to me much, even when I tried to check in and see how things were going with the preparations. At first, I just chalked it up to stress or maybe just being busy. But one day, out of nowhere, she called me and made a comment that honestly shocked me. "Do you even care about my graduation? You never seem to take anything seriously. You've barely mentioned it, and you don't even know what's going on in my life right now." I was kind of taken aback by that because, honestly, I thought I was being supportive. I congratulated her every chance I got. I asked about her thesis, and I even offered to help her with anything she needed. But I didn't think I needed to make a huge deal out of it. I'm not one for grand gestures or constant praise, so I thought maybe my way of showing support was just different from hers. I tried to explain this to her, telling her that I care a lot about her and her accomplishments, but I guess my words didn't resonate because she didn't seem to care about my explanation at all. She just kept saying that I was being cold and disconnected, and that I clearly didn't understand how important this day was for her. Fast forward to the day of the graduation. Emily had made it clear that she wanted me there, but something felt off. I had a gut feeling that things weren't going to go well, and I wasn't sure why I was feeling so conflicted. But I went anyway. After all, she was my sister, and it was a big moment for her. When I got to the ceremony, I tried to be supportive, congratulating her after the ceremony, and even going out of my way to take some pictures with her. But instead of a warm reception, Emily seemed cold and distant again. She didn't thank me for being there. She barely acknowledged my presence beyond a few short words. And when she did speak, it was as if she was almost trying to make me feel guilty for not being enthusiastic enough. At the post-graduation celebration, things took a turn for the worse. I was talking to a couple of relatives when Emily suddenly stormed over, looking angry. "Can you stop being so self-centered for once? You've barely said anything to me today, and now you're just talking to everyone else instead of being present for me. This is my day, not yours." I was stunned. I tried to tell her that I was just trying to support her and enjoy the moment, but she cut me off. She told me that I was making everything about myself, that I was acting like a child, and that she was done trying to get my attention. At that point, I was frustrated, embarrassed, and honestly hurt. I tried to calm down and said I was sorry, but I felt like the situation was getting out of hand. To make matters worse, she started airing out some old grievances in front of the family. She brought up things from years ago, little things that I had done, things that were long in the past, and that I had apologized for years ago. She kept saying I had never changed and that I was still the same selfish jerk I used to be when we were younger. Her words stung, and I didn't know how to respond without escalating things further. So, I took a deep breath and told her I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep apologizing for things I had already apologized for, and I couldn't keep letting her treat me like I was the cause of all her problems. I ended up walking out of the celebration early, feeling like a complete failure. I wanted to support her, but I felt like no matter what I did, it would never be enough. Later that night, I sent her a message telling her I was sorry that the day had turned out this way, and that I wish things could have been different, but I needed some time to process everything. I asked for some space to clear my head and figure out how to move forward. A few days later, I received a long message from Emily. She told me that she was hurt by my behavior, that she was disappointed in me, and that I had ruined her graduation day. She said that I'd acted like I didn't care, and that I couldn't even take a moment to appreciate what she had accomplished. She said that I was selfish for leaving the celebration early, and that I was always making everything about me. She also said that from now on, I needed to respect her boundaries, and that if I couldn't do that, she didn't want me in her life anymore. I was floored. I tried to explain again that I was sorry, but it felt like no matter what I said, it wasn't going to be enough. Now, she's talking about cutting me out of her life entirely, and I'm left wondering if I did something wrong. I feel like I tried to support her the best I could, but somehow, I'm the one being blamed for everything that went wrong. Part of me feels like maybe I should have done more, but another part of me feels like I'm being unfairly attacked. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's graduation after she insulted me and made me feel like I was worthless? I honestly thought I was doing the right thing by trying to stay out of the drama and not be overly in her face, but now it feels like I've ruined everything. AITA for refusing to attend my best friend's party because of her open invitation policy? I, 26F, have known my best friend Rachel, 27F, for about 10 years now. We met in college and hit it off right away. We've always been super close, but recently, I've started to feel like I'm not as important to her as I once was. I know that might sound petty, but let me explain. Rachel is one of those people who loves to have a huge social circle. She's the type of person who throws big parties, invites a ton of people, and tries to keep in touch with everyone, even if she doesn't necessarily know them that well. She's very much into the everyone's welcome vibe, and she's always been like that. About a month ago, Rachel told me that she was planning a big party at her place for her birthday. She mentioned that she was going to send out an open invitation to everyone she knew, even people she wasn't super close to, and that I was, of course, invited. I thought that was kind of odd, but I shrugged it off. After all, she's always had big parties with a lot of people, so I assumed it would just be like any other event. The thing is, Rachel's parties are usually pretty overwhelming. She's a social butterfly, and while I love her, I'm more of a low-key, introverted person. I've been to several of her big parties in the past, and while I had fun, I always found myself in situations where I didn't know many people, felt awkward, or ended up sitting alone in a corner scrolling through my phone. Don't get me wrong, I like socializing with people, but I find that I get drained pretty quickly in large groups, and I prefer smaller, more intimate gatherings. This time, I really wasn't looking forward to it. I was already feeling exhausted from work, and the thought of being surrounded by a bunch of strangers at a loud, crowded party didn't sound appealing at all. I also knew that since Rachel was inviting so many people, I probably wouldn't get much one-on-one time with her, which is what I value most about our friendship. I thought about it for a few days, and finally, I decided to send her a message. I told her that I really appreciated the invitation, but I wasn't going to be able to make it. I explained that I was feeling pretty drained lately and that big parties weren't really my thing anymore. I also mentioned that I'd love to hang out with her one-on-one sometime soon, just the two of us, so we could catch up properly. Rachel responded pretty quickly, and to be honest, I was expecting her to understand. Instead, she seemed hurt and a little confused. She said that she was really looking forward to having everyone at her party and that it wouldn't be the same without me. She mentioned that it was important to her that I came because I was one of her closest friends and she wanted me to be there to celebrate with her. I told her I understood that, but reiterated that I wasn't comfortable with the idea of being at a huge party, especially when I knew I wouldn't be able to spend much time with her. She seemed a bit upset by my response, but she said she understood and that I should think about it some more. I didn't want to drag the conversation on, so I just left it at that and told her I'd let her know if I changed my mind. A few days later, Rachel texted me again, asking if I was sure I didn't want to come. She mentioned that she was having a pre-party the weekend before the main event, where it would be just a smaller group of people, and it would give us a chance to hang out without the chaos of the bigger party. I thought about it for a second, but honestly, I still wasn't feeling it. I told her I appreciated the offer, but that I wasn't interested in attending either party. She didn't respond to my message right away, which made me feel even worse. The next day, I ran into one of our mutual friends, Sarah, 26F, who mentioned that Rachel had been talking about my refusal to attend the party. Sarah said that Rachel had seemed really upset and hurt by my decision, and that she couldn't understand why I wasn't making more of an effort to celebrate with her. I felt a little bad about it, but at the same time, I felt like I'd already made my feelings clear. Later that week, Rachel called me. She was crying and said that she felt like I was distancing myself from her, and that it hurt her know that I wouldn't be at her party. She said she understood if I wasn't into big gatherings, but she felt like my refusal to come to her birthday was personal. She also mentioned that she had been trying to arrange things so that we could hang out, just the two of us, but it felt like I didn't want to put in the effort. I was taken aback because I didn't realize she felt that way. I told her that I wasn't trying to distance myself from her, but I just wasn't comfortable with the whole party thing, and I didn't think it was a reflection of our friendship. The conversation ended on a somewhat tense note, and I've been feeling really conflicted about the whole situation. I know Rachel has a lot of friends and is a social person, but I feel like I've made my position clear. I didn't want to go to the party because it wasn't my scene, not because I didn't want to celebrate her. I just wish she could understand that. I've been thinking a lot about this, and I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm in the wrong. I know she values our friendship, and I don't want to hurt her, but I also don't want to sacrifice my own comfort just to appease her. I'm not sure what to do moving forward, and I really don't want this to cause a bigger rift between us. So, AITA for refusing to attend my best friend's party, even though I know it upset her. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for kicking my brother out of my house after he tried to control how I raise my kids. So a bit of background. I, 35F, have 2 kids, a 7-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter. My brother, 30M, is single, never been married, and doesn't have any kids. He's a good guy overall, but we've always had a somewhat strained relationship. He can be a bit controlling and judgmental, especially when it comes to how other people live their lives. I don't know if it's just a lack of understanding or if he feels superior because of his single status, but he often gives unsolicited advice that rubs me the wrong way. Anyway, about a week ago, my brother came to stay with us for a few days. He had a business trip in the area, and our house is about an hour closer to the airport, so he thought it would be easier to stay here than in a hotel. I don't mind hosting him. I'm a big believer in family support, but things quickly went sideways. Day 1 was fine. We had a nice dinner, talked about old times, and I thought it was going well. But then, things started to change when we were sitting down to dinner. My son, who's a pretty energetic and excitable kid, started asking a lot of questions about what we were having for dinner. He's always been a curious kid, which is great, but sometimes it can be a bit much when he's in full-on inquisitive mode. I told him to just eat his food and stop asking so many questions. He's not allowed to speak with his mouth full, and I don't tolerate excessive talking at the table because it's disruptive. My brother immediately jumped in and said that I was being too harsh on him, and that I should encourage his curiosity instead of stifling it. He said that kids need to express themselves freely and that telling him to be quiet was only going to stifle his creativity. Now, I know my brother means well, but his parenting style, or lack thereof, is something that I simply can't agree with. He's never had kids, so I don't know why he thought he was in a position to lecture me on parenting. I didn't argue with him in front of the kids, but I gave him a look that said I wasn't having it. The next day, my brother started getting involved in other aspects of my parenting. For instance, my daughter, who was in the middle of potty training, had an accident while she was playing outside. She came in crying because she was embarrassed, and I calmly told her that accidents happen and it's okay as long as we try again next time. I made sure she felt safe and not ashamed of the incident. But again, my brother couldn't keep his mouth shut. He told me I was being too soft on her and that I should have punished her for not using the bathroom properly. He even said that kids need more discipline and structure, and that I was being too lenient. I was furious, but I tried to keep my cool. I told him that everyone has different parenting styles, and I was doing what I felt was best for my kids. He didn't seem to take the hint. By the time we got to day 3 of his stay, I was starting to feel really uncomfortable in my own home. My brother would randomly chime in on how I was raising my kids. Everything from how I disciplined them to how I handled situations like when they didn't finish their meals or refused to go to bed on time. Each time, it felt like I was being criticized for being a bad parent. He would give me these long-winded lectures about how children need more structure and how I was coddling my kids. At this point, I had enough. That evening, after he made a comment about how I wasn't setting enough boundaries with my kids, I finally snapped. I asked him if he had ever actually raised kids or if he was just talking out his ass. He responded with something along the lines of, "Well, I'm just trying to help." That's when I lost it. I told him that he could pack his bags and leave my house. I told him that if he couldn't respect my decisions as a parent, then he wasn't welcome to stay here. He was shocked and offended and tried to argue, but I stood firm. I told him that I didn't need his judgment and that I had everything under control. My kids were happy and healthy, and I didn't need him coming in and undermining my authority. He left that night, and I haven't heard from him since. I feel like I made the right decision, but I also feel guilty. I know family is important, but I don't think it's okay for anyone, especially someone who isn't a parent, to try and dictate how I raise my kids. I've been thinking about it a lot, though. Maybe I was too harsh. I could have tried to have a conversation with him about boundaries before kicking him out, but I honestly felt so disrespected at that point that I couldn't even think straight. I've gotten messages from other family members saying I went overboard and that I should have been more understanding. They say that my brother was just trying to help, even if it came across the wrong way. But I'm just not sure. AITA? AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding because of his actions towards me over the years. So, this situation has gotten pretty messy, and I'm honestly still not sure if I'm in the right or if I'm being overly petty. I, 28M, have an older brother, Tom, 31, and we have had a pretty rough relationship for a lot of years. When we were younger, Tom was always the golden child of the family. He was the athletic, charismatic one who got the good grades and had all the friends. I, on the other hand, was quieter, more introverted, and honestly a bit of a nerd. Growing up, I always felt like I was second best to him, but I tried to brush it off. I figured he was the firstborn, so I just needed to accept that he was naturally going to get more attention. The thing is, over the years, his attitude toward me never really improved. As we got older, Tom's behavior shifted from just annoying to downright disrespectful. He would constantly make snide comments about my career choices, my lifestyle, and even the way I looked. He'd make fun of me for being a nerd or boring when I'd stay in to read or play video games instead of going out with friends. He'd mock me for being single, even though he knew I struggled with my confidence and social skills. He'd always rub his relationships in my face and make me feel like I was inferior to him. I could go on, but the bottom line is that I felt like I could never live up to his standards, no matter how hard I tried. Fast forward to about a year ago, Tom got engaged to Rachel, 30. At first, I thought maybe this would be a chance for things to improve between us, especially since he now had someone in his life who would hopefully help him mature. But nope, the wedding planning only made things worse. Tom and Rachel made it very clear that they wanted the wedding to be perfect, and I was expected to do my part as his brother. This included being a groomsman, which honestly felt more like a chore than an honor. From the moment I agreed to be a part of the wedding, the condescension and disrespect ramped up. Tom started dictating what I could wear, telling me to lose weight to look better in the photos, and even getting upset when I couldn't afford the suit he wanted me to buy, despite him knowing full well that my finances were tight. I mentioned to him that I wasn't in a great financial place and asked if there was any way I could help with the wedding in other ways, like helping with logistics or doing some of the smaller tasks. But instead of being understanding, he just brushed me off and said, well, if you're not willing to make the effort, don't expect to be in the wedding at all. I ended up scraping together the money for the suit because I didn't want to cause drama, but it was stressful. The tipping point came when we were discussing the wedding day, and Tom casually mentioned that I would be expected to contribute $2,000 toward the cost of the wedding. He made it sound like it was just a given, as if this was a normal request. When I hesitated and asked if that was really necessary, he went off on me, calling me selfish and saying that if I really cared about family, I would make it happen. I was taken aback, and to be honest, I snapped a little. I reminded him of all the years he had put me down, of how he had always treated me like I was inferior, and how his attitude had never once improved even after he found someone to settle down with. I told him that if he genuinely wanted me to be part of his life, it shouldn't come with conditions like paying for his wedding. He didn't take it well, and the conversation quickly escalated into a shouting match, with him telling me that I was being petty and selfish for not supporting him in this important time of his life. After that, I started seriously thinking about my role in the wedding, and I came to the conclusion that I didn't want to be a part of it anymore. I told him that I was sorry, but I wouldn't be able to contribute financially to his wedding, and I didn't feel comfortable being a groomsman under the circumstances. He was furious and accused me of ruining everything. Our parents got involved, with my mom calling me a disappointment and telling me that family was about supporting each other through thick and thin. My dad tried to stay neutral, but he did remind me that I shouldn't let my past issues with Tom ruin his big day. However, I stuck to my decision and told them that I wasn't going to be taken advantage of anymore. Well, things have only gotten worse since then. Tom disinvited me from the wedding, calling me an embarrassment to the family. I've received messages from other relatives telling me that I've caused a rift and that I should just let it go for the sake of peace. But here's the thing, I don't feel like I'm in the wrong. I've spent my entire life being belittled by Tom, and now he expects me to fork out thousands of dollars for a wedding that I don't even feel emotionally invested in. I try to keep my distance and focus on my own life, but his behavior just keeps dragging me back in. He's now threatening to cut me out of his life entirely if I don't apologize and come back into the fold. Honestly, I'm torn. I want to believe that family is important and that I should just let things go for the sake of peace, but I feel like if I do that, I'll be letting him walk all over me again. I'm not sure if I'm being unreasonable or if he's the one who's overstepping. I've talked to a few friends, and some of them think I'm right to stand my ground, while others think I should just suck it up for the sake of family harmony. I'm just stuck in the middle, and I don't know what to do. AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding and stepping back from being a part of it because of how he's treated me over the years. AITA for demanding that my roommate move out after they sold my things without asking. I, 29M, have been living with my roommate, Josh, 30M, for the past 2 years. We met through a mutual friend and had pretty good rapport when we first moved in together. Josh and I are both fairly chill people, so we get along most of the time, but recently something happened that made me question whether our living situation was a mistake. Let me start by giving some context. I work as a graphic designer and have a fairly decent job, but I've been trying to build my side business as an illustrator for the past year. I have a small studio in the apartment where I do my work, and it's also where I keep a lot of my art supplies, tech, and older pieces that I've been working on for my portfolio. A few months ago, I decided to take a break from some personal projects and focus on building my client base. So, I didn't really spend a lot of time in my studio space, but I would still check on it every few days to make sure everything was okay. The first issue came up about 3 weeks ago when I walked into the studio and noticed that a few of my pieces were missing. Some were old sketches that I had worked on for years, and others were canvases I had been working on recently. I asked Josh about it, and he casually shrugged it off, saying that he didn't know what happened to them. At first, I thought maybe I misplaced them, but after a few days, I realized that not only were some of the pieces missing, but some of my supplies were gone too, including some expensive art materials like specialty pens, brushes, and a high-quality tablet I use for digital illustration. When I confronted Josh again, he seemed genuinely surprised. He apologized and said that he didn't realize how much those items meant to me. Then he mentioned something about having sold some of the things I had in the studio at a yard sale. I was furious. It wasn't the fact that he sold the items, but the complete lack of communication beforehand. He didn't ask, didn't tell me, and didn't even bother to check if I wanted to keep any of that stuff. And honestly, some of the things he sold were things I've had since college, pieces that hold a lot of sentimental value. The idea that he could just get rid of them without asking is beyond disrespectful. After that, I demanded he tell me exactly what he sold and how much he made off of it. He tried to brush me off at first, saying that it wasn't a big deal and I should just let it go. But I wasn't letting this go. I had every right to know what happened to my stuff, and I wanted the money he made off of it. It wasn't just the money either. It was the principle. This was my personal property, and he had no right to sell it without my permission. Josh eventually confessed that he had sold a few smaller items for about $150 in total. That amount is honestly not much, but it didn't make it any less infuriating. We're talking about my hard-earned things, not his random knickknacks. I asked him to pay me back, and he agreed. However, it's been almost 3 weeks, and I haven't seen a cent of that money. He keeps making excuses about how he's working on it, but hasn't provided any sort of timeline. I'm honestly starting to think he has no intention of paying me back at all. I've been feeling completely betrayed by Josh at this point. After everything, I still have to live with him, and I'm finding it really hard to even look at him. I've never felt so disrespected by someone I consider a friend. I started looking for other places to live because I can't continue sharing a space with someone who thinks it's okay to just take things that don't belong to him, sell them, and then offer weak apologies when caught. I spoke to him last night and told him that I want him to move out. I told him that I can't live with someone who doesn't respect my boundaries and my belongings. I also told him that I'm willing to give him some time, but the sooner he moves out, the better. He was furious. He called me selfish and accused me of overreacting. He said that the money wasn't even a big deal and that he didn't think I'd react so strongly over a few items. He even tried to gaslight me by saying that I didn't care about those things as much as I thought I did, and that I was just being unreasonable. Now, here's where I'm torn. Some of my friends agree with me, and say that I have every right to ask him to move out, especially given how little respect he's shown for my things. But others are telling me that I'm being too harsh and that it was just a mistake. I'm struggling because on one hand, I feel like I'm just trying to protect my space and my personal property, but on the other hand, I don't want to be the person who overreacts and ruins a friendship over something like this. I guess what I'm asking is, AITA for demanding that my roommate move out after he sold my stuff without asking me first? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's party because of her toxic behavior towards me? I, 29F, have a sister, Emma, 32F, who has always had a very competitive and, to be honest, somewhat toxic personality. I'm not one to hold grudges, but I've reached a point where I'm starting to feel like I can't take it anymore. I'm just exhausted by how she treats me, and I'm now facing a decision that's caused a lot of tension within my family. For context, Emma and I grew up in the same household, but we had a pretty different dynamic. She was always the golden child who excelled at everything, from school to sports to social life. She's smart, charismatic, and attractive, and because of that, she always had a way of being the center of attention. I, on the other hand, was more the quiet and reserved one. I wasn't as involved in extracurriculars, and I struggled a lot with anxiety and depression growing up. My parents, though loving, always seemed to favor Emma more, or at least they seemed to put more stock in her achievements. As a kid, I understood that she had her strengths, and I was happy to let her shine. But the problem started to surface more clearly when we became adults. Emma began to make subtle digs at me, sometimes even in front of other people. Whether it was about my appearance, my career, or my lifestyle, she seemed to constantly compare herself to me, and I always came up short in her eyes. It didn't help that I didn't always have the best self-esteem, and the more I internalized her comments, the worse I felt about myself. To give you an example, I've been working in a stable job for about 5 years now. It's nothing flashy, but I'm comfortable and I genuinely enjoy the work I do. Emma, however, is a lawyer at a top firm, and she makes a point of talking about it at every family gathering. At first, I tried to celebrate her accomplishments, but over time, it became clear that her success wasn't about making me proud. It was about making me feel inferior. She would often remind me of how lucky I was to have found a job that didn't require much effort, while she sacrificed so much to get where she is. I've even caught her telling family members that I was doing nothing with my life in comparison to her. It wasn't just work either. Our appearances were always a topic of conversation. I'm not a model, but I'm comfortable with how I look. Emma, on the other hand, has always been beautiful in a way that's impossible to ignore. But she's very aware of it, and often she'll make remarks about how unlucky I am that I didn't inherit the good genes she did. She'll post selfies on social media that include captions like, "Tough being the pretty one," or "My sister wishes she could look like me," but she doesn't put in the effort. The straw that broke the camel's back came when we were at a family gathering, and Emma casually brought up my struggles with anxiety in front of everyone. She had known about it for years, and I had always confided in her, trusting her to be understanding. But in front of our relatives, she laughed and said something along the lines of, "It's hard to believe someone with anxiety can handle a job like hers. Guess some people just aren't cut out for the real world." I was mortified. I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she had just thrown me under the bus for no reason other than her own amusement. My parents didn't say anything, and I felt small and humiliated. Since that incident, I've kept my distance from Emma. I've stopped attending family gatherings when I know she's going to be there, and I've started focusing on my own mental well-being more. It's been a hard process, but I've felt lighter without her constant remarks dragging me down. A few weeks ago, Emma invited me to her birthday party. I was initially hesitant, but I thought maybe this would be an opportunity for us to talk things through and try to rebuild some kind of relationship. But then, as I was scrolling through social media, I saw a post where she had tagged me in a picture from a family gathering we had a few months ago. The caption was something like, "If only my sister could keep up with the big kids." It hit me all over again, and I realized that I was just not ready to face her or deal with any more passive-aggressive behavior. I messaged Emma, letting her know that I wouldn't be attending her party. I told her that I needed space to focus on myself, and that I couldn't continue to tolerate her behavior. She immediately called me, asking if I was seriously not going to support her on her birthday. I tried to explain how her actions have made me feel, but she accused me of being overly sensitive and dramatic. She said I was making everything about me, and that I should be happy for her success. She also said that I was ruining family events with my attitude, and that if I didn't show up, I was just proving how much I didn't care about her. Now, my family is mad at me. My parents are upset that I'm not attending the party, and they say I'm making a scene over something that's not even a big deal. They think I should just let it go and get over it, because she's their daughter and it's her birthday. My mom even told me that I'm being selfish by not going and that it's family tradition to celebrate these milestones together. I've tried explaining to them that it's not about the party itself, but about the way I've been treated for years. I'm tired of constantly being belittled and made to feel inferior, and I don't want to put myself in a situation where I'm just going to feel worse about myself. But my family insists that I should just let it slide and not make a big deal out of it. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's party because of how she's treated me? Or should I just suck it up and go, for the sake of family harmony? AITA for refusing to babysit my niece after my sister repeatedly disregarded my boundaries? I, 28M, have a sister, 32F. Let's call her Sarah. She has a daughter, Lily, who's 4 years old. I love my niece, but over the past year, my sister has been asking me to babysit Lily more often than I'm comfortable with. At first, I didn't mind, but lately I've been feeling overwhelmed and frustrated, and now I'm considering putting my foot down for good. I'm wondering if I'm being unreasonable, so I'm asking you all for advice. To give you some context, I've been living on my own for the past couple of years. I have a demanding job as a software engineer, and while I generally enjoy my work, it can be mentally taxing at times. Outside of work, I like to spend my free time relaxing, going to the gym, or hanging out with friends. I don't have any children of my own, and I don't really plan on having any anytime soon, so I enjoy my independence. My sister, Sarah, lives about 30 minutes away from me with her husband, Ben. When Lily was born, I helped out here and there, babysitting when they had appointments or wanted a date night. I didn't mind doing that because it felt like helping family. Over the years, it became a bit more frequent, and I didn't think much of it. However, over the last year, things have gotten out of hand. First, Sarah started asking me to watch Lily more regularly. At first, it was every other weekend, which was manageable. But soon, she began texting me on weekdays, asking if I could watch Lily for a few hours while she ran errands, had work calls, or just needed a break. I have a full-time job, and I'm not always available during the day. I would often tell her that I couldn't, but she would sometimes push back and say, "It'll only be a couple of hours. You can handle it." I eventually caved a few times because I didn't want to let her down, but it began to feel like I was being taken advantage of. A few months ago, it reached a breaking point. I had a particularly busy week at work and was feeling burnout. I had plans that Saturday to relax and recharge, but Sarah texted me Friday night asking if I could babysit Lily all day on Saturday because Ben had to work and she had an appointment. I told her I had other plans and wasn't available. She responded by saying, "I don't get why you're being like this. It's just one day. I really need your help." I felt guilty, but I stood firm and told her I couldn't help that weekend. The next day, Sarah called me in the afternoon, nearly in tears, saying she was desperate and didn't know who else to turn to. I still said no, and she got quiet and hung up the phone. I assumed it was the end of it, but a few hours later, she texted me again saying, "I'm really disappointed in you. I'm always there for you when you need something, and this is how you repay me." I was taken aback. I didn't think I owed her anything for the times I'd helped out, but it really hurt to hear her say that. After that, I didn't respond to her text, and I didn't hear from her for a few days. A week later, I ran into her at a family dinner. She was still upset with me and made a few passive-aggressive comments. I could tell she was angry, but I didn't want to escalate the situation, so I just tried to change the subject. She eventually said, "Well, you're not a kid anymore. I guess I'll have to find someone else to help me out with Lily when you're too busy to care." That stung, and it felt like a guilt trip. She's my sister, and I care about her and Lily, but I don't feel like I should have to sacrifice my own time and well-being every time she needs a break. At this point, I'm getting to the point where I'm ready to stop helping out altogether. It's not that I don't love my niece, but it feels like my sister doesn't respect my time or my boundaries. Whenever I do say no, she acts like it's a personal betrayal. And when I do agree to help, it's never just a few hours. It's always a whole day or more, and it's taking a toll on me. I've tried explaining this to her, but she always brushes it off, saying things like, "You're the only family I have nearby who can help," or "You don't understand how hard it is for me." I feel guilty, but at the same time, I'm starting to get resentful. I've had to cancel plans and rearrange my schedule multiple times just to help her out. And while I know parenting is hard, I don't think it's fair for her to expect me to constantly drop everything for her. I'm not her free childcare provider, and I shouldn't feel guilty for wanting to prioritize my own life. So, I'm asking Reddit, AITA for refusing to babysit my niece after repeatedly telling my sister I need space and boundaries? Am I being too harsh? Or is it reasonable to expect her to respect my time? Edit. I want to clarify that it's not that I don't want to help her at all. I've helped her in the past, and I'm happy to help out once in a while. The issue is that she's been asking more and more, and it's feeling like she's not respecting my personal boundaries. It's not even about Lily. It's about my sister not acknowledging my needs and acting like I should always drop everything for her. I've told her multiple times that I need a break too, and it feels like she's dismissing that. Another thing I should mention is that Sarah has a few friends who could help, but she always insists on asking me, even when I've said no. She says I'm the best with Lily and that she's comfortable with me, but I feel like that's just manipulation at this point. Anyway, I've decided I'm going to have another conversation with her about this, but I'm still torn about whether I'm being unreasonable in not wanting to help more. AITA for refusing to lend my sister my car after she totaled hers? So, I, 28M, have a sister, Jess, 26F. We've always had a bit of a strained relationship, mainly because of her constant lack of responsibility. Growing up, she was always the free spirit who would jump into things without thinking them through. And I was always the one left picking up the pieces. Our parents, while loving, have always been somewhat passive about her behavior, always brushing things off with she's just going through a phase, which, I think, enabled her to act without any consequences. Anyway, a few days ago, just got into a car accident. I'm not sure exactly how it happened, but from what I've gathered, it wasn't a major collision. She was driving too fast on a wet road and slammed into a guardrail. The car ended up getting totaled. Thankfully, she was fine. Thank goodness for airbags and seatbelts. But now, of course, she needs a car, and that's where the issue started. Jess doesn't have a lot of money. She's constantly asking for handouts, whether it's money for rent or to cover unexpected expenses. She works part-time at a coffee shop and hasn't been able to save up much. I get it. Life can be hard sometimes, and not everyone has the same opportunities, but I've been very careful about not enabling her bad habits. The last time I helped her out financially, she spent the money on a weekend trip with her friends and never paid me back. So, I made a promise to myself that I'd stop being her financial safety net. When the accident happened, Jess reached out to me in a panic, saying she was going to need a car to get to work and run errands. She didn't have car insurance, which wasn't a surprise, and her only option was to either buy a new car or borrow one from someone. Naturally, she turned to me. Here's where I might sound a little harsh, but bear with me. I'm the only person in our family who owns a reliable car. I bought it with my own money, have paid off the loan for it, and I take good care of it. I don't have the kind of funds to just lend it out to anyone on a whim. She texted me asking if I could let her borrow my car for a few days while she figured out her situation. I won't lie, I was already upset because I knew this wasn't going to be the last time she'd ask. But I didn't want to just say no right away. I wanted to think about it, so I asked her a few questions. How are you going to pay me back for any damages if something happens? I asked. She just said, "Oh, I'll make sure nothing happens to it." Now, I'm no idiot. I've seen how careless she can be with things, and I wasn't about to risk my car for her convenience. I told her, "I can't lend you my car, Jess. It's my only form of transportation, and I can't afford to replace it if something happens." She got upset and started accusing me of being selfish. She said I was being cold and didn't care about her, that I should just help her out for once. She even brought up that she'd always been there for me, when I needed her, but I honestly don't recall any significant time when she helped me. If anything, I've always been the one to support her, even when it meant going without. I stuck to my decision, though, and told her I just couldn't risk it. She started getting even more upset, saying I was being unreasonable and that she was just asking for a little help. I tried to explain that I wasn't saying no because I didn't care about her, but because I had to prioritize my own financial security. That's when our parents got involved. They called me and said I needed to step up and be there for my sister because she's going through a tough time. They also said I should understand that she made a mistake and she was trying to figure things out. I told them the same thing I told Jess. I couldn't afford to put myself in a position where I could lose my car, especially when I knew Jess might not be as careful with it as I'd like. My parents weren't happy with my decision, and they made it clear they thought I was being a jerk. They said I should at least let her borrow it for a few days until she could figure something out. But I stood firm. My car isn't just a convenience. It's how I get to work, how I get to appointments, and how I handle everything. I just don't feel comfortable handing it over to someone who has shown time and time again that she's not responsible with other people's things. Eventually, Jess gave up trying to convince me. She managed to find another solution. She's renting a car for the time being, but the whole situation left me feeling frustrated. Now, my sister isn't talking to me, and our parents keep bringing it up whenever we talk. They think I should have helped her out, and they're upset that I wouldn't make this small sacrifice for family. I honestly feel conflicted. On one hand, I don't think I did anything wrong. My car is important to me, and I shouldn't be expected to risk it just to help her when I know she's not going to take care of it the way I would. But on the other hand, part of me wonders if I could have been a bit more understanding, especially since she's in a tough spot. I know it's not the same, but I can't help but wonder if I'm being too harsh, especially when everyone is telling me I should have been more supportive. So, AITA for refusing to lend my sister my car after she totaled hers? AITA for refusing to let my brother move in with me after he lost his job? So this is a bit of a long story, but I need some perspective. I'm a 32-year-old woman, living alone in a small house that I bought 3 years ago. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine, and I've worked hard to get to the point where I don't have to rely on anyone. I'm pretty independent and enjoy my space. I don't have any roommates or live with family members. It's just me, and it's been great. Now, I have a brother, Tom, who's 28. We've always had a somewhat strained relationship growing up, mostly because he's always been the type to get into trouble. My parents had a lot of financial issues when we were kids, and Tom was the one who often seemed to be the center of the chaos. He was always the problem child, getting into fights, ditching school, and making poor life decisions. On the other hand, I was the quiet, responsible one. My parents always seemed to favor Tom, and that left me feeling like I had to fend for myself a lot of the time. It created a lot of resentment between us. Over the years, Tom's life has been a series of ups and downs. He graduated college, but hasn't been able to hold down a job for more than a year. He's always had some excuse for why things didn't work out: bad management, unfair coworkers, or not liking the work environment. It's frustrating to watch because he's extremely capable when he wants to be, but he's never really put in the effort to make things work long-term. About 6 months ago, Tom lost his job. He came to me and asked if he could move in temporarily while he found a new job. I was a bit hesitant, but I agreed, mostly because I felt sorry for him. He promised me it would only be for a couple of months, that he would get on his feet and find something new. I agreed to let him stay, but I made it clear that he would need to pay rent and contribute to bills. He agreed. The first couple of weeks were fine, but soon enough, I started noticing things that annoyed me. Tom has always been a bit messy, but when he's living with me, it's taken to another level. His laundry started piling up in the living room. Dishes would be left in the sink for days, and he rarely cleaned up after himself. I would have to constantly remind him to do his part. I also noticed that he would spend entire days in front of a TV or playing video games without making any real effort to job hunt. It was like he was perfectly content living in my house without putting in any effort to contribute. I tried talking to him about it. I told him that if he wasn't going to pull his weight, he needed to leave. That didn't go over well. Tom became defensive and said he was doing the best he could, but I could see through it. He wasn't looking for a job. He was just wasting time, hoping that something would fall into his lap. I even helped him by sending him job leads and offering to help with his resume, but he would never take any of it seriously. After about a month, he started making excuses, saying he felt like he was being treated like a kid and I was being too hard on him. It's not like I don't want to help him. I do. But there's a limit to how much I can tolerate, especially when I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. I've spent years building my life and career. I've worked hard to be independent and self-sufficient. I don't mind offering a hand when someone is genuinely trying to improve their situation, but I can't stand people who expect things to be handed to them without putting in the effort. Things came to a head when I came home from work one night to find that Tom had thrown a small party at my house without asking me. I walked in to find half a dozen people hanging out, eating my food, and using my bathroom. Tom didn't even think to inform me beforehand. He said it was no big deal and that everyone was just hanging out. I lost it. I told him that he was disrespecting my space, and I made it clear that if he was going to keep acting like this, he needed to find another place to stay. Tom was furious. He said I was being unreasonable and that I was blowing things out of proportion. He accused me of being selfish and said that if I really cared about him, I'd let him stay without making him feel like a burden. But the more he spoke, the more I realized I was absolutely right. He had no respect for me or my home, and he wasn't making any effort to improve his situation. After that, I gave him an ultimatum. I told him that if he wasn't going to pay rent, clean up after himself, or look for a job seriously, then he would have to leave. Tom was really upset by this, but I stood firm. I told him that I couldn't keep enabling his laziness, and I wasn't going to let him stay indefinitely without contributing. Tom ended up moving out a week later. He found a small apartment with a roommate, but he hasn't been very communicative since then. I know he's hurt by what happened, and he's even made comments to our parents about how I kicked him out and abandoned him. My parents have been texting me, saying I was too harsh and that I should have been more understanding of his situation. They say he's going through a tough time and that I should have given him more support. They also claim that I could have helped him out by being more patient and offering more guidance. I don't know if I did the right thing. I don't want to feel like I'm abandoning my brother, but at the same time, I don't think I was being unreasonable. I've helped him in the past, but I can't keep doing everything for him. He's an adult, and he needs to learn how to take responsibility for his own life. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother move in with me after he lost his job. AITA for kicking my best friend out of my house after he asked me to do something I was uncomfortable with. So this is a bit of a long one, but I need to know if I'm in the wrong here because I'm honestly conflicted. For some context, I, 28M, have been best friends with Ben, 30M, for almost 10 years. We met in college and we've been through thick and thin together. We've always had a very close friendship, and I've considered him like a brother to me. Over the years, we've shared a lot of personal stuff, and we've been there for each other during some really tough times. About a month ago, Ben started dating this woman, Sarah, 27F. I hadn't met her in person yet, but from what he had told me, she seemed like a great person. However, as time went on, I started to notice some red flags in the way Ben talked about her. He'd mentioned how controlling she could be or how she didn't want him hanging out with friends too often. It didn't sound like a healthy relationship, and I'd expressed my concerns to him, but he'd always brush it off, saying that it wasn't a big deal. I didn't want to push him too much, so I just let him handle it in his own way. Fast forward to last week. I invited Ben over to my place to hang out, just like we used to. He was supposed to bring Sarah with him, but she backed out last minute for reasons I didn't really care to know. It wasn't unusual for her to not show up, and Ben had assured me that it was fine. The two of us were just going to catch up, play some video games, grab some pizza, the usual. Things were going well at first, until he dropped a bombshell on me. We were sitting on the couch, chatting about life, when Ben suddenly looked at me, almost awkwardly, and said, "Hey, I need a favor." A big one. I was caught off guard because he rarely asked for anything major. I asked him what was going on, and that's when he told me that Sarah was uncomfortable with our friendship. Specifically, she didn't like how close we were. She had apparently mentioned that she thought it was weird how often we hung out and how intimate our bond seemed. Ben admitted that she'd made him feel guilty about it, saying that it wasn't normal for two guys to be so emotionally close. Now, I was a little confused. I mean, Ben and I have been friends for almost a decade, and I've never thought of our relationship as anything out of the ordinary. Sure, we've shared deep conversations and been through a lot together, but isn't that what friendship is all about? So I asked him what the favor was, and he told me that Sarah had suggested we take a break from hanging out for a while. He said it was to make her more comfortable, and that if we did this, she'd stop nagging him about me, and maybe their relationship would improve. At first, I thought he was joking. He wasn't. Ben said that if I agreed to give him some space, he could go back to being with her without any more issues. I was pretty stunned. I mean, this felt like a massive betrayal to me. We've been through so much together, and now he was asking me to cut back on our friendship because his girlfriend was uncomfortable with it? I told him I didn't agree with it. I said that I wasn't going to pretend that our bond was something it wasn't just to make her happy. I tried to explain that I thought it was unfair to ask me to change our friendship dynamics for someone else's insecurity. Ben got defensive and insisted that it wasn't like that. He said it wasn't about me at all, but about him trying to make his relationship work. I told him that I couldn't be a part of that. He then said, "If you can't support me in this, then maybe we're not as close as I thought." That hurt. It really hurt, and I'm not sure if I should have been as upset as I was. It felt like he was choosing her over me, and it wasn't just about a minor thing. It was about changing the foundation of our friendship. I didn't know what to say, so I just told him to leave. I told him that if he was going to choose her over me, then maybe we needed a break too, but not in the way he was asking for. He left in a huff, saying that I was being unreasonable and that I was overreacting. I haven't heard from him since, and it's been a few days. I feel terrible, but I also feel like I had to stand up for myself and my own boundaries. I'm just not sure if I overstepped by telling him to leave and essentially putting a halt to our friendship. So, Reddit, AITA for kicking my best friend out of my house after he asked me to take a break from our friendship to appease his girlfriend? I really value my friendship with Ben, and I never wanted things to end like this. But at the same time, I don't think I should have to change who I am or the relationships I have just to make someone else comfortable. AITA for refusing to let my sister move in after she messed up her life. I, 30M, have a sister, Claire, 28F, who's always been a bit of a wild card. We grew up in a pretty tight-knit family, but as we got older, Claire made some choices that definitely raised eyebrows. She's always been the free spirit, doing things on a whim and not really thinking them through. I've always tried to support her, but it's been tough. My parents are getting older, and I'm the one who's always been more responsible, so I often end up being the one to deal with the fallout when things go wrong for her. About 6 months ago, Claire's boyfriend, Adam, dumped her. They'd been living together for about 2 years, and it was a pretty messy breakup. According to Claire, Adam was controlling and emotionally abusive, but there were always two sides to the story. As far as I could tell, they were both a bit of a disaster in their relationship. Regardless, the breakup hit Claire hard. She moved out of the apartment and into a friend's place, but that arrangement didn't last long either. She's had trouble keeping stable housing for a while now. Fast forward to a few weeks ago. Claire calls me up, and she sounds desperate. She tells me that she's been living with a friend temporarily, but things have gone south again. Her friend is moving in with her boyfriend, and Claire can't stay there anymore. She says she has nowhere else to go, and she asks if she can move in with me for a little while until she gets back on her feet. Now, I know that a little while with Claire means indefinitely, but I was sympathetic. She was going through a rough patch, and I didn't want to leave her on the streets, so I agreed. I told her she could stay for a month, and we'd figure out after that. At first, things were fine. Claire is a lot to handle, but I've had her stay with me a few times before, and we've always managed to make it work. She's a little messy, doesn't clean up after herself, and stays up late, but I figured we could deal with that. I gave her the guest room and told her she could use the bathroom and kitchen, but she had to respect my space and my routine. The first couple of weeks were okay, but then things started to take a turn. Claire started making some questionable decisions again. She got back in touch with Adam, the ex-boyfriend. I was really against this. I told her it was a bad idea, that she was just setting herself up for more heartbreak. She insisted that she'd learned from the relationship and that she and Adam were better off as friends now. I wasn't convinced, but I didn't want to tell her what to do with her life. Then, She started staying out late almost every night. I wasn't sure where she was going, but I'd hear her stumbling back into the house in the early hours of the morning. When I confronted her about it, she'd get defensive, saying she was just having fun and that I needed to chill out. I let slide for a while, but then things started getting worse. She brought Adam over to the house a few times without asking, and they'd stay in the guest room for hours, talking and hanging out. I wasn't okay with this. The last thing I wanted was for her to get back together with him and make things worse for herself. I told her that she needed to set boundaries with Adam and that he couldn't be in the house without me knowing. She got mad, called me controlling, and accused me of trying to ruin her life. It didn't stop there. Claire's habits started affecting the whole household. She wasn't paying rent or helping with bills, which I had expected, but she also didn't contribute in other ways. I'd come home from work and find dirty dishes piling up in the sink, the living room a mess, and the laundry overflowing. I'd ask her to help out, but she'd brush me off or say she was too busy with her personal stuff to do chores. It was clear she was taking advantage of the situation, and it was starting to get frustrating. The final straw came when I found out that Claire had invited a bunch of her friends over while I was out of town for the weekend. I came home to a trashed house, empty beer bottles all over the place, and loud music blaring. Claire wasn't there, but the house was a disaster. I spent the next few hours cleaning up the mess, and when she finally showed up, I lost it. I told her that she couldn't keep treating my house like a party pad, that she needed to grow up and be responsible. I told her she had a week to find a place to stay, and that I was done letting her stay here without any accountability. She got really upset and started crying. She said I was being unfair, that she didn't have anywhere else to go, and that I was kicking her out when she needed me the most. I told her that I wasn't kicking her out, I was just setting a boundary, because she was taking advantage of my hospitality and disrespecting my space. She accused me of being selfish and not understanding how hard her life was right now. I told her that I understood, but that she needed to start taking responsibility for her actions and not relying on me to bail her out every time she made a mess of things. Now, I'm feeling guilty. Claire's family situation isn't great, and I know she doesn't have many other options. But I'm also fed up with her behavior, and I feel like I've given her plenty of chances. She hasn't learned from her past mistakes, and she's not taking any steps to improve her situation. I've tried being supportive, but I'm not a doormat. AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me after everything that's happened. I want to help her, but I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. I know she's going through a tough time, but at what point do I stop enabling her bad decisions? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.